Fanfic Corner, presented by Jennifer. Breath of Hope, Chapter 5, Recovering, Part 2. Okay, for those of you who have not yet seen the first few videos for Breath of Hope, I suggest you go view those now, as this is a continuation of that story. So, I was thinking, Rayla said, as she placed the ladder against the side of the lodge. I remember this saying from when I was little. A healthy sky is a healthy dragon. What does that mean? The dragon asked, watching her. Well, I think it means that flying helps keep dragons healthy. So maybe flying will help you get better. She checked the ladder, then nodded, pleased with its stability. So why don't you get up there and give it a go? The prince stared at the ladder and felt his stomach drop. It's very high. Nah, it's barely a drop, she smiled, climbing up herself to the space above the front door. Come on, just have a look. Biting his lip, Callum followed her up and stood uneasily on the roof, his tail swishing back and forth for his balance. Rayla was perfectly at ease and stood right near the edge. See, it's not that far up. Looking over the edge, Callum had to agree. It wasn't too far, but he didn't like the idea of jumping. Rayla, do I have to do this? Her expression softened as she stepped over to him, reaching to hold his hands. Of course not, Callum. You don't have to do anything you don't want to. I will never make you do something you don't want to do. Promise. I'm just trying to help you recover. The sooner you feel better, the sooner we can head towards Xadia. She squeezed his hand for a moment. Callum, you know I keep patrolling the area for danger. It's not a case of if they find us, it's when. We can't stay here forever. The dragon thought before sighing, his wings stretching out. What do I do? Smiling at his cooperation, the elf walked up to the edge. Just spread them wide, flap them hard, and jump, she said, before jumping off herself and landing on the ground below in a crouch, looking up at him. I don't have wings, so I fell, but you'll go flying. Callum didn't look sure, but he trusted Rayla, since she knew more about dragons than he did. All right, I'll try. His hands closed into fists, and he screwed his eyes shut. He did his very best to concentrate on his wings, and soon got them to flap. Once he was sure he had enough speed, he ran to the edge of the roof and leapt, just as she had done. For a moment, he was free of the ground, his eyes opening in the joy as he went up. And then very quickly down, landing in the mud below. Rayla winced at his crash. Ouch! You okay, Callum? Looking up with a mouthful of dirt and grass, the prince spat it out and glared at her. I am not doing that again. He forced himself up and headed inside. "18, 19, 20. Ready or not, here I come," Callum called, beginning to look around. He slowly searched the room for Ezran, who was apparently hiding somewhere. Rayla sat by a window, barely hiding her amusement at their game. This was the 4th round of hide-and-seek between the two. It was Ez's idea, another way to get Callum walking and exercising. He searched from place to place around the lodge, looking in spots the prince had hidden in before, then methodically searching. He laughed as he looked about, thinking of each place the human could have hidden. Eventually, he spied a pair of shoes under a bed. He smirked and prepared himself to pounce, quickly kneeling down. Gotcha! He laughed as he grabbed the human. The other boy laughed as well and nodded. All right, your turn to hide, Callum. With a nod, the draconic teen hurried and ran off to find somewhere to hide as Ezran began to count. He looked around for a good spot to hide before spotting a high beam on the roof. Ez said he could hide anywhere, so the roof wasn't off limits. Grinning, he looked for a way up. Spotting a table near the wall, he was sure it would give him some extra height to climb up. Heading over to it, he carefully stepped up onto the table and reached for the beam. However, as he reached up, the table rocked back and forth, toppling over, sending Callum and the table to the floor, while also throwing the vase that had been decorating it to the floor with a crash. The noise drew the others to him. They saw the broken pottery and upturned table, as well as the dragon who was rubbing his backside where he landed. Rayla sighed. Are you all right? That hurts, he groaned, then turned to look at the broken vase, panic filling his eyes. Ezran, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to break it. It's all right, Callum. Accidents happen, Ezran said, as he pushed the table back up and looked at the vase. I never liked that vase anyway. Come on, let's get this cleaned up. Head down, ashamed of his mistake, Callum reached out for the shards and began to pick them up slowly. He paused when he heard a loud hiss and turned to see Ezran looking at his hand, pain in his expression. Ezran? It just caught my hand, he explained, holding his hand out to reveal a small cut between his fingers, blood already trickling down between them. The sight caused the dragon to freeze. Even his breathing stopped. Slowly, the color from his cheeks began to drain away, and he swayed on the spot. Blood. Callum? He didn't respond to the call. His eyes stared at the blood, and his mind went somewhere else. He was back in a cold, dark cell, his wrists chained to a wall. A man drew blood from his arms. The shadow in his mind smirked as he reached out for him. Callum was finally able to breathe. Master, no, please, he begged, shaking his head, screwing his eyes shut, and clutching his head while tears ran down his face. He gripped his head so hard his nails began to bleed from the pressure. This made him think his talons were being clipped yet again, and his tail curled around him. His chest got tight. He couldn't breathe or move or do anything. It was happening again. He was trapped, alone, and scared. This man was going to take it from him. Everything. It was getting tighter, closing in, his head throbbing. Beside him, Ez and Rayla were trying to get his attention, but nothing worked. He was too deep into whatever was plaguing his mind. Seeing him panic like this was horrifying, and the elf reached out for his cheek, just like she had done before. Hey, Callum, it's okay. Come on, calm down. He didn't respond, just curled further and further into himself, gasping for breath. But for every breath he took in, he didn't appear to be letting any out. Ezran held his shoulder. Callum, please calm down. It's okay. You need to breathe. Please. The human's voice didn't reach him either. He just rocked back and forth, his whole body trembling. Staring at him in horror, Rayla frowned a little. Callum, if you don't snap out of it now, I will have to slap you out of it. Again, he didn't respond beyond gasping for air. I mean it, she warned, raising her hand a little. Last chance. A terrified whimper was his only response. All right, I warned you. Quickly, she slapped him across the face, her fingers leaving a light red mark on his cheek. Callum froze before slowly blinking and turning to look at the elf. Rayla? Bottom lip quivering, she looked away. I'm sorry, Callum. I just needed to snap you out of it. You weren't breathing, and I'm sorry. I didn't want to slap you, but I couldn't think of any other way. Please forgive me. The dragon rubbed his cheek for a moment and frowned. No, he whispered. Thank you for saving me from that memory. Are you feeling all right now, Callum? Ezran asked, hiding his hand behind his back in case the blood set him off again. My head hurts, he groaned. I just... He shook his head and ran his hands through his hair. I'm sorry. I'm sorry about your hand and the vase and panicking and hey, if you want to make it up to me, you could always do the jerk face dance. Ezran interrupted with a big smile. Rayla and Callum shared a confused look at the suggestion. The jerk face dance? Callum repeated. Yeah, it's something my dad made up. It's his way of apologizing when he's a jerk. Look, I'll show you. He stood up and stepped away from the vase, putting his hands under his armpits and pulling a strange, goofy face before beginning to flap his arms like wings. He stepped around in a circle with his legs out so he waddled and went around a few times, then jumped, doing jazz hands at the end. See? The jerk face dance. Rayla wasn't sure what the purpose of the dance was, but then she heard Callum laugh beside her. It was a tired sound, but an honest, happy one. That's the funniest thing I ever saw, he laughed, standing up and putting his hands under his arms. Show me again? Suddenly, the human's plan made sense. Distraction. Rayla smiled as Ezran taught Callum how to do this jerk-face dance, while she quickly and quietly cleaned up the broken vase. Hearing the she glanced and getting it out of sight. She glanced back, hearing the teen laugh, but her smile faded as she thought about the pain that the memory had caused him.